Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'm sharing the cards I made using Love From Lizi's 2020 card kit. The theme is Warm Winter Wishes. This is an exclusive Love From Lizi card kit and quantities are always limited. I will have a link provided in the description box if you are interested in the kit. I love the beautiful colors and all the adorable critters that are included in this kit. And there is a ton of ephemera. So let's go ahead and get started with my first card. I'm using a sketch from Mojo Monday. This is number 542. I'm using some white pearlescent paper for the background. For this large circle, I took one of the pattern papers and a circle die and try to cut out as many of the images as possible. Beautiful pattern paper in this kit. For this wide strip that goes down the center of the card, I'm using some pattern paper with these fun stripes in it, and it looks like snowfall. I decided not to use a full piece since most of it's going to be covered up with other layers. I'm going to use some of the new peel-offs. This is what comes in the kit. It's the clear iridescent glitter, but it has some silver foil on the edge. Super shiny, it's so pretty. And I'm also saving pieces, so I'm not going to put a full piece going all the way down the card. Wrap the ends around the back just to make sure they're going to stay in place. Then I'll layer this panel onto some dark green cardstock. And the kit does include colored cardstock, but I will be bringing in some of my own since I add a lot of layers to my cards. For this narrow strip that goes across the card, I'm using some leftover specialty cardstock that was in one of Love From Lizi's add-ons, I think from a couple years ago. I had a little bit left and it matched beautifully with the pattern paper. Adhere my image circle die cut. I'll put my card front onto a card base. For the sentiment, I've already gone ahead and stamped this out using some gray ink. Just stamped it on the white cardstock that's included in the kit. And I'm just going to do a quick fussy cut all around that stamped sentiment, leaving just a little bit of the white border showing. And I was trying to figure out where I wanted to place it on the card, and I decided to cover up one of the walrus tails since you don't see any of its body at all. Figured that was a good spot. I am going to pop it up using some thin foam squares. And then finishing touch, I'm adding a few snowflake die cuts. I used some white glitter cardstock. This was an add-on from one of Love From Lizi's releases. I always keep all those extra pieces of specialty and glitter cardstock. It's perfect for little embellishments like this. And I'm just adhering all of those down using some liquid adhesive. One more snowflake I'm going to put above the sentiment. There is my finished card. I think with the specialty cardstock, the glitter cardstock, and the peel-offs, it didn't really need any extra embellishments. Now moving on to card number 2, and I won't be using a card sketch this time. There's this beautiful floral paper with lots of blues in the kit, so I decided I would use that for the background of my card. I just layered that on some cardstock that I have on hand, just a dark turquoise color. Put my card front onto a card base, and then I cut out a scallop circle die cut, use some more of the white pearlescent paper. I'm going to glue that onto the card panel. Using that same dark turquoise cardstock, I cut out this stitched strip. I'll be adhering that to the lower portion of the card, but I do want to add some of the ribbon that's included in the kit. And the ribbon is slightly sheer, and I didn't want the pattern paper to show, so I'm going to adhere it onto this cardstock strip. I put some score tape down first to adhere it in place, and then I'll wrap the ends of the ribbon around the back. Now I had intended on doing this before I adhered my panel onto the card base, but I forgot. That's okay, this still works just fine. Just remove the backing on the score tape and adhere it to my card front. I selected 3 of the ephemera pieces, all the pretty blue bouquets, 3 different sizes. I'm going to put those around the sentiment. So the kit includes 4 different dies. 3 of them are sentiments. So this one is Winter Wishes, and I cut it out of some gold satin cardstock. Just put some liquid adhesive on the back. These are very detailed dies. Adhere it to the center of the scallop circle die cut. And of course, I can't forget to dot the eyes. So these are super tiny pieces. I'm using my embellishment wand to help pick those up. So once I have those in place, I'm going to put the 3 blue flower bouquets around that sentiment. Just trying to figure out where I want to place them. And I am going to pop up all 3 of them using some thin foam squares. Most of the pattern papers included in the kit have critters or snow scenes, but there are at least 2 that have really pretty flowers in the background. The other is a pretty pink color, but I decided to go with the blue since it worked well with the Winter Wishes sentiment. So let's remove the backing on that last ephemera piece. Then I am going to tie a bow and put it in the center. And I really struggle with this bow. I'm not sure why. So I did cut out some of the part with me just fussing with that bow. But once I get it fairly decent looking, I'll adhere it to the card using a glue dot. And I grabbed the wrong size glue dot. I should have grabbed a smaller, so I did fold this large glue dot in half. So these are super sticky. Just trying to not have it stuck to my fingers. And I thought the card was finished, but I did decide to add a little bit of sparkle to the flowers. I'm using a clear shimmer glitter brush from scrapbook.com. Just putting it on the flowers on all those ephemera pieces. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. Now moving on to card number 3. The card sketch is from Mojo Monday. This is number 547. I selected this fun pattern paper with all the critters. I think it looks like a nighttime scene with that dark color. It's like a gray, a little bit of a greenish color in the background. I used some of the gray cardstock that's included in the kit for the background, and I'm layering all of these pieces using that dark turquoise cardstock that I have on hand. Trying to make sure to get that piece straight. Then I'll add a sway peel off. This is I think it's the sky blue color. I'll just put one of them underneath that image panel. Wrap the ends around the back and then adhere this panel onto that cardstock layer. For this strip on the left hand side, I'm using the top portion of another pattern paper. You'll see the rest of it on a later card. And I'm just layering this on some gold satin cardstock. Since it is going over all those other layers, I'm going to add a few foam squares just on the top and lower portion. Then I'll put some adhesive in the center and then adhere it to the left hand side. And I did cut this strip narrower than the measurements indicated on the sketch, since I didn't want to cover up the polar bear's face or its nose, since it seems to be the prominent image on that pattern paper. I am going to add a small banner in the upper right hand corner as indicated on the sketch. I'll put some scrap cardstock pieces on the upper portion just to keep everything nice and level. And I'm trying not to cover up that little bunny and walrus too much. It does cover up part of their ear in the hat, but for the most part you can still see them. I'll put this card front onto a card base, leaving just that 1/8 of an inch of the card base showing. I've already gone ahead and stamped out the sentiment. This is Warm Wishes. Layering it on that same turquoise cardstock. I'll adhere it to the card using some liquid adhesive. And for a finishing touch, I'm going to use some of the glitter enamel dots that are included in the kit. I'll put a couple of them on that banner, put a couple underneath the sentiment, and then I'll add one more next to the walrus. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 3. Now moving on to card number 4. The card sketch is from MFT. This is number 174. I have this fun pattern paper for the background. It's pink, has a look of glitter sort of snowing from the sky, but there isn't any glitter on it. And then it has that nice row of trees on the bottom. So this is the same pattern paper that I used for that thin strip on the previous card. I really like it, and I wanted to feature it on its own card because I love those trees on the bottom. I am adding 2 of the clear iridescent glitter peel-offs to the top of the card. I also rounded the bottom 2 corners of this panel. I'm going to put this on some of that dark turquoise cardstock. And my cardstock layers are generally 1/8 of an inch more than the measurements listed on the sketch. Now I do modify those sketches all the time. It just depends on what size paper or image or sentiments I'm using. For the stitched square die cut, I used some Dusty Rose pink pearlescent paper. This is again from a Love From Lizi add-on bundle. And I have some gold satin specialty cardstock for that banner that goes across the middle. And I am going to add some scrap pieces of cardstock on that gold piece, just where it goes off of the square die cut. Then after I add both of those pieces, I do have to trim down one of them because I made it a little too wide. I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere that to the center of the square die cut. Try to make sure to get it nice and straight. I'll put my card front onto a card base. I'll leave that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Now for those 3 1-inch circles, I'm going to modify those slightly. I'm going to use 2 of the deer ephemera pieces, and then the sentiment will be in the center on a circle die cut. Already stamped that out, Season's Greetings. Then I'll just adhere both of the deer. I made sure to select 2 that were, well, their bodies are facing each other. I guess their heads are turned the opposite direction. And then finishing touch, I'm going to add a few more of the snowflakes. I do use snowflake dies quite a bit throughout this video. They just go so nicely with the winter theme. And I cut those out using some more of the white glitter cardstock. And I decided not to add any of the enamel dots or sequins since I want to keep some of my cards on the flatter side. That way I don't have to pay any additional postage when I'm mailing them this season. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 4. Now moving on to card number 5. So again, I'm not using a card sketch, but I'm going to create a little snowy scene. I have the green striped paper with the snowfall for the top portion, and then using some white pearlescent paper, I cut out a stitched hillside. Just layering all this on some green cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base, and this time I'm not going to have any of the card base showing. Then I pulled out several different ephemera pieces, all the little walrus critters. So I have the one that I'm going to put on the top of the hillside that has the igloo in the background. I'll add some scrap cardstock to the back of that piece, just where it goes off of that snowy hill. So I want to keep everything nice and even. Put some adhesive on the back and place that onto the card. And then all of the other walrus are going to fill up that snowy hillside. I'm calling this my walrus wedding card. I think the 2 walrus by the igloo look like they're getting ready to get married, just waiting for the minister. And then all the other are the guests for the wedding. So I'm just going to glue them down using some liquid adhesive. This is another card I didn't want to add any extra dimensions, so I could keep it nice and flat. I try to have them balanced out. I didn't want to have an off-looking number of walrus guests. Put the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. Just did the Season's Greetings again. And then just to add a little extra detail and sparkle, I cut out a bunch of tiny snowflakes. Use some more of the white glitter cardstock. I'm just gluing those onto the background with the rest of the snowfall. And it's fun that that glitter cardstock matches the snowfall on the pattern paper. Just a couple more and then my card will be finished. And if you can believe, I still have several more walrus ephemera pieces. The kit really does include quite a bit. Now moving on to card number 6. I won't be using a card sketch this time, but I am going to make a slimline size card. So I have my background all cut out. I used an embossing folder for this snowfall. This is just the gray cardstock that's included in the kit, and I'm layering this on some silver mirror cardstock. You can see my shirt reflection there for a moment. And I have some of the white pearlescent paper for some snowy hillsides. And I don't have any slimline dies that have the hillside, so I did use one, I think it's about 6 inches wide. I cut it out and then taped it back onto this paper and then ran it through again. Unfortunately, I didn't line it up very well, so you can see a little oops on the left-hand side, but I will be covering that up later. So I pulled out an assortment of ephemera pieces so I can create another snowy scene, putting the 3 trees in the background. Go ahead and put my card front onto a card base before I add the rest of my critters. The snowfall embossing folder I use, it's only about 5.5 inches, so I did have to run my paper through the machine twice. And it's an embossing folder I've had for many years. I tried to find a link for it, but I couldn't. It's a fun one. I like to use it though. I'm laying out the rest of the ephemera pieces so I can create my little scene. The fun thing about making a slimline card is you can add more critters and trees to your little scene. So I'm going to pop up some of the images using those thin foam squares. So I'm popping up the penguins. I'll pop up the little fox. I'm going to pop up the deer in the background, but only with some extra cardstock. So I'm trying to level out all of the pieces that are going off of a hillside. So here I'll add the piece behind the deer. I already did one behind one of the trees. For the pink tree, I do put one of the thin foam squares on the very top, and then just liquid adhesive for the rest. And for the sentiment, I used one of the dies that's included in the kit. Cut out Merry Christmas, used some of the silver mirror cardstock, and I did cut out 2 of the sentiments and I just stacked them on top of each other just for some extra dimension. I'm going to put my acrylic block on top, just trying to let the glue dry since it is adhering to an embossed background. And I forgot to glue down this last tree. Put that scrap cardstock on the upper portion and then glue it onto the card. Hold that in place for a moment while the glue dries. And then for a finishing touch, I'm going to use some of the glitter enamel dots. Trying to decide what color, and I stuck with the white. Put a couple in the upper right hand corner. We'll put 2 of them in the lower left hand corner. And I wanted to add 1 more just to have that odd number of embellishments. And I ended up putting it in the upper right hand corner with the others. So there is my finished card, and this is definitely one of my favorites. But do let me know which card is your favorite. Now moving on to card number 7. Wanted to make sure to use this fun printed acetate that's included in the kit. And you actually get 3 of the same prints. It looks like a snowy background. So first I'm going to stamp out the sentiment Warm Wishes. I'm doing this on the white pearlescent paper. So this is going to be the background of a shaker card. I decided to use the white paper for the background so you could see some of that print design. I'm going to attach this black frame to the front. That way I'll have a place to put my foam behind it and you won't be able to see it. Putting some score tape all along the edge of the frame. I'll remove the backing and attach this onto the acetate. And the acetate piece is an A2 size. So You don't have to trim it down if you don't want to. And then this frame is slightly smaller. I think it leaves about 1/4 of an inch on the outside. So I'm going to put this background piece onto my card base. Then I can start working on the shaker window. So I'm going to use these thin foam strips. They're from scrapbook.com. They work perfectly to put on the back side of this frame. So I'm just cutting the ends, trying to make sure to get them close together so none of the sequins are going to sneak out. I'll remove the backing and then add a second layer. That way there's enough room for the sequins to actually shake inside the shaker. I'll get that final piece in place. Give it a good press to make sure everything is going to stay put. And then I'll spoon out some of the sequins onto the card base. I've had quite a few people ask what I have in the bottom of this little plastic container where I keep my sequins. It's just a small piece of paper towel. I find it helps make them a little less staticky when I'm trying to grab them and put them on my cards. Nothing fancy. Remove the backing on that foam tape, and then I'll run some anti-static powder along the inside, just trying to not have too much static. But as you can see, as soon as I start placing this down onto the card base, some of those sequins were jumping out. I didn't get it perfectly straight, but it's pretty close. So now I'm going to add a couple of the ephemera pieces on top of the acetate. I have 2 of the polar bears, and they look like they're sleeping. I'm going to put them together so their noses are touching. And since I've been having so much fun with all the snowflake die cuts, I'm going to add some to the background, and I'll attach them on top of the acetate. And I cut these out using some of the shimmer paper or the pearlescent paper. Just put some liquid adhesive on the back, using my tweezers to pick them up. And I have an assortment of sizes. I'm trying to place them randomly. Some of them will be on top of the black frame and the others will just be on the acetate. So just do a couple more of these tiny snowflakes. And you can't really see most of the sequins at the moment. They are hidden at the bottom, but once you shake it, they do pop up. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 7. Now moving on to card number 8. I'm using a card sketch from MFT. This is number 467. Have some more of that white pearlescent paper for the background. Then I'm adding this square of dusty pink cardstock on top. Trying to get it nice and centered. And I decided to use some of that same color ribbon that's included in the kit. But since it does have that sheer look, I'm going to attach it to some white cardstock first. So I had some score tape on the back side of the cardstock, and then I can attach my ribbon. The ribbon will add some separation between the pearlescent paper and that pink cardstock. So I'll just adhere these down using some liquid adhesive. And I do have the ribbon cut a little bit wider than this panel. And then I'll just wrap those ends behind. Go ahead and adhere the second ribbon piece down. I can flip this panel over. Put some ATG on the back, tuck the end of the ribbon, and then just to make sure they're not going to come off later, I'm going to put a piece of score tape on top. It'll also add some extra adhesive when I put this piece onto my card base. I'll remove the backing on the score tape, add some ATG, then I'm going to layer this panel onto some black cardstock. I think it adds some really nice contrast. And for this card, I do have 1/4 of an inch for that matted layer. Put my card front onto a card base, then I can start working on the image and the sentiment. After I had those 2 pieces all adhered together, I remember I wanted to add some gold peel-offs. So usually I like to cut them a little longer and wrap the ends behind the back, but I couldn't do that this time, but it's still fine. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife and just trim it off at the very edge. I've never actually had any peel-offs fall off before. I'm just always trying to make sure that everything is going to stay together. For the image on this card, I'm using 4 different trees. So the kit has those 2 pattern papers that have pink and green trees, and I decided to cut out 2 each of the pink trees, one with the darker background and the other with the white background. And then I'm going to glue these in place, just following the sketch. And I did select this sketch based on those little tree images because I was trying to figure out a way to add several of them to a card. And I really like how this one turned out. I'm just using liquid adhesive to adhere all of these in place, trying to get them nice and even. I'll use another of the sentiment dies. So I did a double layer again just to add that little extra dimension. And this is Winter Wishes, and I cut it out using some gold satin cardstock with some liquid adhesive all on the back, and then adhere it to the center of the card. So even though it's going over those busier trees, I think with that specialty cardstock it still stands out enough. Put the little dots to both of the eyes, and then add some finishing touches. I'm going to use the pink glitter enamel dots. Now, even though the enamel dots do have adhesive on the back, I am going to add just a drop of glue as well, since it is going on top of the ribbon. I'll put 2 in the upper left-hand corner and just add 1 more in the lower right-hand corner. I had a little extra glue sneak out on that bottom one, so I'm just going to wipe that away with some scrap cardstock. The glue does dry clear, so it's not a big deal, but I'd still rather clean it up. And there is my finished card, and this is card number 8. Now moving on to card number 9. The card sketch is from MFT. This is number 399. I have this beautiful floral paper for the background. And I'm going to add some solid cardstock to the front. And this is just some cardstock scrap that I have on hand. I'm going to use some of the peel-offs that are included in the kit and put it on the side of that cardstock. It's going to add a little extra sparkle, or a lot of extra sparkle since these are super sparkly. I think I'm using the medium width on the peel-offs. Tuck those ends behind and then add this panel onto some navy blue cardstock. You can see I do have a word cut out of the back. I wanted to make sure I had enough of this blue cardstock, so I decided to cut it out of the background. I'm going to put this card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. And instead of the circle as indicated on the sketch, I cut out a white heart. I'm going to use 2 of the ephemera pieces. These adorable little bunnies, or maybe they're foxes. I'm not sure, but they're super sweet. And I'm going to glue those directly onto the heart. I'll have one up just a little bit higher on the right-hand side. That way I'll have an area to tuck the sentiment in. So here's the sentiment using Winter Wishes again. I did cut out the 2 layers and I've already glued them together. Just adding that extra bit of dimension. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and then I'll glue it to the lower right-hand corner. Using that dark navy cardstock, it has enough contrast against that busier pattern paper. Make sure to add the dots to the eyes. Otherwise it just didn't look quite right. And then instead of the little circle embellishments as indicated on the sketch, I'm going to add a few more of the snowflakes using just a couple sizes. Still going to place them in basically the same area as the sketch. I'll glue those directly onto the card using some liquid adhesive. So this will be another card that I kept nice and flat. It's good to know I'll have at least a few cards that I won't have to pay extra to mail this Christmas. Do one more snowflake. And then I did decide to add a banner to that upper right hand corner. Felt like it needed something. I'll just glue that right down. Just use the same cardstock as all those layers. I decided to add a little bit of sparkle to the flowers on that foxy bunny on the left. So I'm using my glitter brush from scrapbook.com. And there is my finished card, and this is card number 9. Now moving on to my final card. This is card number 10. I'm using a card sketch from Freshly Made Sketches. This is number 458. I have 2 different pattern papers. I'm layering all these pieces with some green cardstock. The background piece looks like pine needles, some off-white and some green, and then that center piece has a bunch of different little circles, kind of like a snowfall. I decided to add a couple of the silver moon dust peel-offs to the bottom using the medium and the narrow width. And this time I'm not wrapping them around the back. I find the moon dust are a little bit thicker, so I don't want to add any extra bump behind. So I'm going to put this panel onto that green cardstock layer. I'll put my card front onto a card base, then I can start working on the image and the sentiment. So I am going to add one more piece of pearlescent cardstock. This is an off-white color. I'm just adding that where those 5 little strips would be, because instead of those little strips, I'm going to add some of the wooden trees that are included in the kit. Now I do want to decorate them. They're super cute. There's 9 different wooden trees that are included in the kit, and I'm going to do some heat embossing on them. So I took this tree, pressed it into my Versamark ink, and then sprinkled on some Love From Lizi embossing powder. This is the baby blue party embossing powder. So lots of glitter, and it has these little holographic pieces. So it's super sparkly. So I just heat set that with my heat gun. And then the other 4 trees, I've already gone ahead and heat embossed those. I did 2 of the trees in the blue, and the other 3 I used the Teal Lagoon embossing powder, which is also made by Love From Lizi. The colors match perfectly with the pattern papers. So I laid them all out on my card to make sure I got the spacing correct. Then I'll adhere them in place using Ranger's multi-medium mat. I find it holds wooden pieces really nicely. Even with the blue embossing powder, you can still see the detail on the trees, so that's really fun. For the sentiment, I'm using another of the sentiment dies. If you can't tell, I really like them. I cut it out of some silver mirror cardstock. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and then glue it on the right hand side underneath the trees. Trying to make sure to get it straight. So again, I have those 2 teeny tiny dots for the eyes. Trying to flip the one over. These are so small, but using my embellishment wand made it really easy. Then finishing touch, I'm going to add some of the enamel dots. Figure I already have some extra dimension with the trees, so it's fine to have a little more with the enamel dots. And I'm using just the blue color. So there is the finished card. It's super sparkly, and I really like how this one turned out. It's another favorite of mine. Now here's just a quick recap of the 10 cards I made using Love From Lizi's November 2020 card kit. As I'm recording this voiceover, the kit is still available. I will add an update in the description box when it sells out. So if you are interested in the kit, I would suggest not waiting. Love From Lizi's kits sell out every single month. The only way to guarantee receiving a kit is to sign up for her monthly subscription. And because of so many manufacturing delays, Lizi has decided to skip the December kit this year. Instead, she's offered a couple of mega packs and a few special edition Christmas kits. So I will have a link for the full November release in the description box if you want to check any of those out. Now here's everything I have left over from the kit. I still have 3 full sheets of cardstock and about half of each of the others, a ton of scraps of pattern paper, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full 6x6 sheets left over, lots of the glitter enamel dots, of course the stamp set, which I didn't use any of the images. I have 4 more wooden trees, 2 of the little scene acetate pieces. I have quite a bit of the ribbon, lots of the peel-offs. There are the 4 dies that are included. I used all of the sentiment dies, but I didn't use the polar bears. I have about half a bag of the sequins left, and then a ton of the ephemera. The kit comes with so many pieces. There's still more critters that I didn't even get to. I know I could easily make at least 10 more cards. So we'll see if I end up having enough time to come back to this kit. But I also have the 2 mega packs that Lizzie sent me. So plenty of paper to make lots and lots of Christmas and winter cards. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.